What's up, self-healers? Lisa Lightfeather here. Welcome to my channel, Closing the Gap, where we make a conscious effort to meet you where you're at on your healing and your spiritual journey. I've been a little under the weather with allergies and such, and it's been quite extreme. And so I've been trying to do the holistic way, and I finally went and started taking the over-counter medications to try to get it under control. And here soon I have an appointment with my primary care provider, so we'll see what we're working with. So if I seem a bit out of breath, that's the reason why. But we're still going to get out here and get our sunrise walk in, even though it's a little difficult. Yeah? But today I wanted to come on and speak about a topic in regards to family gang stalking. And there's a reason why I'm speaking on this topic. Last weekend I was invited to something going on within the family, one individual in particular, who had invited me to like this social work, counseling, mental health type of it wasn't a ceremony, it was a mental health type of, just a briefing, right? Bringing awareness to certain topics. And this topic in particular was the BIPOC, which is the Black Indigenous People of Color, right? And integrating what they refer to as ketamine, which is a legalized form of psychedelic medicine into mental health. So if you know anything about me, I'm all for integrating psychedelics into mental health, right? And so I'm quite proud of this family member who is taking on this, paving the way for this type of intervention. And so I didn't want to miss it, and I wanted to show my support. Well, I had a funny feeling before I went down there. I was like, man, I hope I'm not setting myself up for failure in any way. Empaths with the family dynamic, just sometimes it seems like it just never quite goes right. So, but I said, well, I really want to encourage this person on this topic. I want them to keep going, right? I want them to blaze the trail with this. And so I went to show my support. Now, this particular family member, this is important for a reason. This is the reason I'm saying this. This particular family member is Puerto Rican and Black, right? So certainly a person of color. But they lean more towards the Puerto Rican side. But she claims more the Black side, right? Which those of us of mixed race, we can claim what we want, right? But when you're given a briefing about Black Indigenous people of color and psychedelics, the more you look like a person of color, the better, right? Well, that's not really the point. The point is that I went there, and as I sat there in the audience supporting them, they repeatedly pointed out that I was in the audience. And repeatedly kind of zoomed in on the fact that I am what's considered Black, right? So at first I was like, oh, that's nice that she addressed me and everything. I think that's really nice that she acknowledged me. And then after a minute, it got a little uncomfortable because I was just like, why does she keep emphasizing that I'm in the audience, right? Well, she started using it as that as a Black person, I'm only 2 generations from slavery and she's 3 generations from slavery or whatever. Basically acknowledging that the mental health facility has not really, they don't really know how to work with people of color in mental health. And that they are kind of resistant with working with us with psychedelics and mental health. So it's a beautiful path that she's on, and I encourage it 100%. These people are over here doing some roofing, so sorry about the noise. So that went well enough. But okay, after it was all over, her and her friends were going out to eat. Now, I wasn't thinking about going out to eat. One of her friends said, "Don't you want to bring such and such with you?" And all of a sudden, her energy shifted. Like, I'm done with such and such. Such and such has served their purpose. Just me being black in the audience was my purpose, to basically make her look good in some way about the topic that she was speaking on. Because mind you, she looks more Mexican or Puerto Rican than anything else. Which I know, don't come for me in the comments. I know Puerto Ricans are black and so forth and so on. I'm just trying to make a point here. So she kind of hesitated, and I picked up on the energy. But then they asked me again, and I said, well, sure, I'll go, And so I went, and it was one of those menus where you type in the stuff you want. It was like a ramen place where you could just type in the ingredients you want in your food. And so I was watching her do hers so that I knew how to do it. She covered it up like, I'm not paying for your food. Oh, I wasn't expecting you to pay for my food. I was trying to see how to work the menu, since you've obviously been here before and I haven't. So I picked up on that energy, and then I went over there and I ordered my own food. I had no expectations of her to pay for my food. But to be quite frank, if I drove 3 hours to come support you and sit in a briefing that you were giving, which, by the way, was full of half-truths, but I wasn't going to say anything about that. I'm here to support you. I'm not here to call you out, right? And so, but apparently they thought that I had the capacity of maybe calling them out, or basically exposing their mask, right? But that was not my intention at all. My intention was to show support for blazing the trail, or what I think is blazing the trail. What I really believe is that I'm the one blazing the trail when it comes to mental health and psychedelics, and they are mirroring me in true narcissistic form. Now, this person in particular, I hadn't really spoken to them over the years, just briefly, you know what I mean? And they have been quite standoffish, but I love this person dearly. And so I thought that maybe the reason they're being standoffish is because their mother and I, we've been parted ways in this whole narcissistic and empath dynamic, right? And so I felt like she was basically respecting her mother and supporting her mother. And that's the reason she wasn't very involved with me. And I honor that, because I don't expect a child to take the side of someone else outside of their mother, right? Unless their mother is just, it's just not like a child to take the side of someone else outside of their parent. And I wouldn't expect that, right? And so that's why I thought that we weren't really on speaking terms all the time. Like she would speak to me if I called or text or something like that, but she wasn't really engaged with me. And so somewhere inside of my mind, I thought we were good. I thought that the reason she wasn't speaking to me was just out of respect to her mother, and that I was honoring that. But it turns out that she's part of the narcissistic family dynamic, and that she is them. Now, part of me's not shocked, right? But there's a part of me that was quite hurt, because I thought this person loved me, and that they also loved their mother, but out of respect to their mother, they kind of, was distanced from me. Well, it turns out that this person is in full narcissistic form. And to be quite frank and to be quite honest, I kind of lied to myself, because I knew this person was a narcissist. They're like a model, and they're just all on, front stage and center. Aries energy. I'm not saying Aries are narcissists, but, you know, selfish, me, what about me? And, you know, it started out because she was one of the firstborn, and she was the first one in this family that we had a chance to make a difference with. And so, of course, we gave them everything that we didn't have, to include admiration. You're so smart. You're so beautiful. You can do anything. Everybody loves you, so forth and so on. And what we created was a grandiose narc. Combination of creation and genetics, I imagine. But even in spite of all that, this was one of my favorite people in the family, because they were the first one in the family outside of what my hideous mother had created. So when I saw that she was really masking and putting on the narcissistic facade, and anybody that I would have a conversation with at the table, which were her friends, right? They're the ones that invited me. She didn't. They wanted me to sit next to them. They wanted to conversate with me. And I was enjoying being out and socializing, because as you know, I'm normally by myself. So I was enjoying her friends, you know, and they're all age groups, from her age group up and down. And so the mental health field, it's everybody from people straight out of college to people getting ready to retire, you know, with a vast spectrum of age groups, demographics, sexual orientations, all this stuff, because mental health, you know. And so we're basically advocates for everyone. And so the demographics at the dinner was quite diverse. And so they were asking me to sit down with them and chat with them and stuff like that. And I saw her pulling people towards her and away from me. Almost like she didn't want to share my energy. First of all, she already gave the energy that she didn't want me to go. And for some reason I went anyways. I guess I needed to see this. Because if I had got in my truck and just left, I wouldn't have saw this. I would have saw the mask and the facade of her standing in front of the community and saying how much she's advocating for BIPOC and so forth and so on. And some of the half-truths that she told while she was up there in front of them. But I wouldn't have seen this. So she's pulling everybody away from me. In particular, this one gentleman who, or I don't know what he identified as. I know he was married to another man, and he referred to this other man as his husband. So she was in particular pulling him. Well, he was the one who was in particularly telling me, come sit down next to me, Miss Lisa. Come over here with me, Miss Lisa. And you know, he was drawn to my energy. Basically, you know how they do when they start tapping into the feminine energy. And I don't want to speak bad about him, but my niece all of a sudden kept emphasizing he's married. He has a husband. And one time we were talking, I said, well, your lover, blah, blah, blah. It's not his lover, it's his husband. And it just registered to me that she was insinuating that I was trying to come on to this man who was married to another man. Even though that man was calling me over to sit with him, you know, to chat with him, her, I don't know what he identifies as, because he basically was drawn to my energy. I'm not going to say what the reason was that was for. It was a pleasant conversation and I didn't feel drained, so I'll say that. She just kept emphasizing how he was married and that was his husband. It wasn't his lover. And they've been married for 20 years and holding his hand and bringing his attention back to her. And it hit me that she was insinuating that I wanted to sleep with this man. This is the same thing that her mother does. And quite frankly, other people in the family, I'm not going to say, the whole family does this. But I was caught off guard when she did it. And it hurt. When I realized that, no, she was not pushing me away because she was respecting her mother. She was pushing me away because she is her mother. I thought, I am so tired of my family. Now, I just turned 57 years old on August 25th. 57. 57. And they are still accusing me. Now, I'm not saying that 57-year-olds don't have desires, because we do. But they are still accusing me, and they've been accusing me since I was 16 of wanting to sleep with someone their nasty ass is sleeping with. Can you imagine? I'm almost 60. 60. And they're still accusing me of wanting to sleep with anything that has a slong. Y'all, I'm just done. I am so done. Not only anything that has a slung, but a man who's gay, who identifies as gay, who's with someone he refers to as his husband, and has been with that said someone for 20 years. Not to mention, although he was a pleasant man and I enjoyed conversing with him, and although I knew he was feeding on my energy, it wasn't in a toxic way. It was in a subtle way. Just a normal flow of conversation, right? But instinctively, I knew that he was tapping into the feminine energy. But it wasn't something that was draining me. So it was allowed, basically. But although he was all of that, he wasn't the best looking man in the world. Girl, let me tell y'all something. So here she is, ciphering his energy. And now this is when I really saw the narcissism. I brought up the conversation, just trying to be sociable, about because it was a bunch of mental health people now. And so my research on gangstalking is what I've experienced, and then YouTube. So it gets a little wonky, the topic of gangstalking, right? And the medical facility has completely gaslit anyone who says they're being gangstalked, and chalked it up as either schizophrenia or some poo-poo or woo-woo, that this person is paranoid and so forth and so on. And so I thought, it's a table full of therapists. Let me ask, has anyone here heard of gangstalking? And most of it was, that they hadn't really heard of it, or they didn't know what it was about, or that they consider it psychosis or something of that sort. Well, and they said, well, why do you ask? I said, well, when I kind of got out of that whole narcissistic, now I'm not thinking about the person I came there to see. This is a conversation that I'm trying to have because, to be quite frank, I need answers, right? And so I said, and I thought this was a great time to get some free therapeutical answers. I'm at a table full of therapists. And so I said, well, when I finally broke away from the narcissistic empath dynamic, all of a sudden, that narcissistic energy started attaching itself to other people, outside sources that I wasn't necessarily involved with. Well, when I mentioned the word narcissism, the person that I went there to see, their whole energy shifted. Now, this is the second time that I've seen this when it comes to narcissists. It's something that I refer to as a statue stare. Some people refer to it as a reptilian stare. But instead of focusing on what I was talking about, she started zooming in on the gay guy that was sitting next to me. And he was talking about something with his relationship. And so she was mimicking compassion and totally focused on him. Now, what I've learned about this statue stare is that when narcissists feel like they're being exposed, they start trying to mimic empathy. And it is so much effort put into this that there's a disconnect between the thought of what empathy should look like and their facial expression. And so it's almost like a statue stare. They will just, their face freezes. They're looking at the person, trying to mimic eye contact, but they're really just kind of staring at the person's forehead or over their head or over their shoulder. And so they're in a conversation like this, she's trying to make it look like it's an intimate conversation. I hope I'm not too all over the place. And she's just like staring. And I saw that narcissistic mask, what I call the statue face. That's the second time that I saw that. When a narcissist is attempting to seem interested or attempting to really trying hard to block out everything around them and mimic empathy. So when a person shows empathy on their face, there's a series of micro expressions that goes along with empathy. You know, somebody might like, oh, I'm so sorry. Their eyebrows might go down. They might, I'm so sorry, honey. Or they might shake their head. There's a series of micro expressions that go along with true empathy. But the narcissist empathy is just like, it's like a stare, like they don't have any other expressions outside of staring at the other person. They don't blink. There's no micro expressions. There's no pity or concern. It's just this stare. Like they almost think that showing empathy is just looking at a person. There's absolutely no energy behind it except for this weird reptilian type statue energy. It's the strangest thing. So I guess I said all that to say that the person that I thought was for me, one of the only ones left in the family that I thought was for me, is actually against me. And she's part of that family gangstalking. Gangstalking can look like what they're referring to as people following you, people doing strange things to you, blah, 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 repeatedly, right? And it can go so far as to seeing same color car, same color shirt. That's a little too deep down the rabbit hole for me. But it gets a little deep, right? So it can go to that extreme to family gang stalking, where everybody is accusing you of being a whore and that you want to sleep with everybody's man. Now, not once in life have I ever slept with anybody else's man in my family. Never. Not once. Now, have people did that within the family? Yes, they have. But I have never once slept with anybody else's man in the family. As a matter of fact, if I'm around anybody else's man, I'm not even around anybody else's man alone. If you ain't home, I'm not coming to your house. Right. And so I was that's a whole different story, but I was in a situationship where if I even looked like I wanted to, if I even sat on somebody else's bed, I got beat up. So from a very young age, I was beat into being hyper vigilant when excuse me, when it comes to respecting other people's relationships. So I had PTSD when it came to respecting other people's relationships, honey. It was over the top extreme. Have a seat on my bed. I was taught you don't sit on nobody's bed unless you plan on sleeping with them. And the first time I did that, was excited about seeing a California king for the first time. I was about 15 years old. I jumped my ass up on that bed and said, oh, look at this big bed. And next thing I know, my head was on the floor. Honey, trust me when I tell you, I don't disrespect other people's relationships. So to be gang stalked in my family and be stigmatized as the person who wants to sleep with anything that's a man. They think because I'm single, I'm desperate. That's how stupid they are. And it just so happens that I think because you're in a relationship and you don't know how not to be in a relationship, that you are the one that is in fact desperate. Anyways, my heart was broken because the one person that I thought still had some of my back proved that she didn't. And go figure, you know? And so I had a kind of a rough start to my week in realizing that the little hope that I had that I wasn't alone in the family dynamic, I don't give a fuck about no relationship, in the family dynamic was shot. So there you go. There is a such thing as family gang stalking, where they gang up on you behind the scenes. They slander your name. They triangulate you. They discard you. They do all this stuff. They do the whole narcissistic gamut. It's just coming from the entire family. Honey, let me tell you something. Well, that's all I have for you today here on Closing the Gap, We make a conscious effort to meet you and myself exactly where we are. We'll see you next time here on Closing the Gap. Y'all have a good day.